Hi, welcome to Disaster Preparedness Class number 6. I'm Ann Forrest. My email is seattleprepares@gmail.com, and I'm glad you're here. We're going to talk about making a plan tonight. It's a very vague idea thrown out there a lot, so I'm going to show you what my plan looks like for my particular household, and then you can take ideas from that and hopefully design your own plan. To plan smartly, you have to know your hazards. In Seattle, these are the top 18 hazards as determined by the Office of Emergency Management. And you'll notice that 7 of the top 9 hazards has us sheltering in place. We in Seattle don't have hazards that we can run from. We don't get a heads up that they're coming. They're very sudden, like earthquakes, or there's just no way to outrun them, like windstorms and power storms and weather events. So we sit tight. We need to get really good at sheltering in place. So a lot of what we go through in these classes is how to make that sheltering in place process a little easier and just preparing for that. Your plan should consist of how to shelter in place for many of these top hazards. So why do I need a plan? It's very possible that after a big event, you won't be able to communicate and you won't be able to think clearly. There's just too much going on, especially if it's something sudden like an earthquake. Just too upsetting to the system to be able to think your best. So let's think about this ahead of time. Talk about it ahead of time. And then when you need it, you've already done that mental work. After an earthquake, communications will either be down because cell towers were damaged, or most likely be overwhelmed just because so many people are getting on their cell phones to try and contact loved ones. So communications are almost always impacted after a disaster and definitely after an earthquake. Sometimes there's just no time to communicate, such as something as disrupting as a house fire. You can't figure out what to do in the moment when something's happening that fast, like a fire. So you need to figure out where's your family going to meet after a fire. Also, you're building muscle memory. If you do this enough, if you think about it enough, if you talk about it enough, it becomes part of your DNA kind of. So you react much more smoothly and much more confidently if the need ever arises. And it gives you peace of mind. If you've thought through it, you kind of have an idea of how bad it can be. It was really, really helpful to me to think through it, realize that we would be okay, that we had a plan, made me feel much better than before when it was just very nebulous and scary. So I'm a big proponent of peace of mind. So I want you to start with this scenario. It's Thursday, it's the middle of January, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's either dark or getting dark. It's cold, it's rainy, and it's middle of the week. So your household's probably out and about. Folks are at work, folks are at the grocery store, folks are at school, whatever. Obviously, dark, cold, and rainy because it's January. Everyone's out and about, and there's a strong earthquake. So if you could talk to one another in that position at that time, if you could freeze time and go, okay, what are we going to do? If you could talk to one another, what would you say? And then that becomes your plan. And then just remove this idea that you're going to be able to talk. So I'm going to go over the Forest family plan. This is just mine, looks very different from what yours looks like. We have 3 household members. I, myself, and I'm in Northeast Seattle. My husband, we'll just call him Dad, works at the VA clinic, VA hospital in Beacon Hill. And then my teen is now down in Rainier Beach, Columbia City area. So that's where we are on a Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. There's an earthquake. We all know to drop cover and hold on. We all know to check on those around us, people and pets. We all know to control our utilities. We turn off the water to whatever building we're in if we possibly can. We check for gas leaks, and if there is any natural gas leaks, we all know how to turn off the gas. We also think about electricity. If we see frayed wires or smell insulation burning, we will turn off electricity to the house or to the building we're in. So we control utilities, and then we communicate. And our method of communication is texting because text is best. We will text a group text to all 3 members of our household, plus my out of town contact, who, as always, is my mother in law in Las Vegas. So we will text how we're doing, where we are, what our plan is, and the date and the time of that text.
My mother-in-law watches the conversation between the household members on the ground in the impacted area. If she's watching the conversation and the text flowing back and forth, and she notices that somebody isn't getting that text, she will take the appropriate text and forward it down to them. Because sometimes it's easier to get a text out of the impacted area and back in than it is across the impacted area. So that's how we communicate. We lean on our out of town contact. In my household, my partner, my husband in the VA, also has a GMRS radio. And that is a subject we're not going to get into today, but I may teach a class on GMRS radio in the future. So I have a GMRS radio up here in Northeast Seattle. My husband has one in Beacon Hill. We can talk to one another because of something called a repeater, which is kind of like a cell phone tower. GMRS radio, just like all amateur radio, works even when cell phone towers are down. My partner and I would talk on GMRS radio if the texting wasn't working. And then when my husband left the VA, he would take that portable GMRS radio with him and he would use it on his walk north. So that's just something else that's in our plan. Because my husband works at a hospital, he will be there for a couple days helping out where he can. And we've talked about this. I do not expect him to come home immediately. It will be days before I will see him, more than likely. Hopefully, I can find out that he's okay. But because we've discussed it, I know he's not going to leave work for a while. He is a medical provider, needs to stay there and do what he can. T, the teenager, will shelter in place. A teen doesn't have tons of stuff in his apartment, but he understands how to shelter in place. So he will stay there for a little bit. Hopefully, he's listening and can get communication on that text string and knows when dad is ready to leave. Teenager walks to dad. So they start walking north. They figure out how to get across the bridge. That's an issue in our family because part of our family works down south of the Ship Canal and our home is north. One of the things that my husband and my teen need to find out is how to get across the Ship Canal. We'll talk a little bit about that. This walk home is going to take a while. I put 4 hours. I think it's going to be longer. We'll see. So really quickly, crossing the Ship Canal, again, is an issue for my family. When I sat down and did my plan, I'm only looking at my family and what I need to know to get all of my family together. Maybe crossing the Ship Canal is not an issue for you. Maybe it's more bridges. Everybody's plan is a little bit different. But for me, crossing the Ship Canal, I looked at several things along that Ship Canal. I looked at something called liquefaction. Liquefaction is a phenomenon that only happens in earthquakes when the ground shakes during an earthquake, and especially if the ground is wet, is saturated with water, that ground becomes something like quicksand, and heavy things will sink. Buildings, cars, roads, all that kind of stuff sinks. As soon as the earth stops shaking, the earth turns back to hard dirt, turns back to ground. So everything that has sunk is now stuck in the dirt. So liquefaction is a weird phenomenon, and I can show you how to find out if there's any liquefaction around where you live or work, or even the path home for all of you to gather, your whole household to get back together. So that's liquefaction. The other thing I looked at along that Ship Canal is landslides. Are there likely to be any landslides around the Ship Canal that I want to tell my family to avoid those areas? Because traversing over that would just be difficult, trying to get across the water. I looked at the age of the bridge and then whether or not they were retrofitted. So those are the 4 things I looked at in my situation for family members having to cross that Ship Canal to get north. My husband's down here, I'm up here, we're trying to get across the Ship Canal. One of the things my husband knows to do is to check at emergency communication hubs on his walk north. These will be places to get information about what's going on. Our class next week is all about hubs. I encourage you to tune in. Hubs are going to be so important that first week after a large disaster. We train hard to support our neighbors, share information, share resources in those days 1 through 6, kind of while we're waiting for city officials to get their feet underneath them to figure out what's going on, for supplies to arrive from outside, all that kind of stuff. Hubs are going to be crucial. I know that. My husband knows that. So he knows to stop by these hubs on his walk north and get all the information he can. He does have a map of the hubs on his phone. The map that we have of where all the hubs are in Seattle is interactive, and so you need to have internet access to see it. So every once in a while, I'll bug him. He'll blow up the map of the hubs and then snap a picture and just saves it on his phone and deletes the old one. Just a thought about something to do. If my husband is unable to get any information walking north, if he doesn't have any better guidance, then the Montlake Cut Bridge is probably a good place to start. So that's the yellow. Try that bridge first based on liquefaction, landslides in the area, how old the bridge is, and whether or not it's been retrofitted. The Montlake Cut Bridge. It's a really good place to start. Another option, I find this fascinating, and I don't know enough about it to be intelligent, but I know it's on the table as to whether or not pedestrians will be able to walk through the light rail tunnel. I think it's just a little bit east of the Montlake Bridge. I'm not exactly sure. You can't see it on the map because it's on the ground, but the light rail cars probably won't be running. They're going to have to inspect the tracks before they're going to be able to put a light rail car going up and down. So is it possible that the city would allow pedestrians to walk in that tunnel and get from one side to the other? I just think it's fascinating, and hopefully I'll have an answer soon. And my guess is the city's going to have to do a little bit of inspection of that tunnel before they would allow pedestrians to walk through it, but hopefully that wouldn't take too long. It's a very new tunnel, so hopefully it's built to really good earthquake standards. For my partner, he will bring his GMRS radio with him so that we can keep talking every once in a while as he walks north. Plans. What you're trying to do is get your household back together. How would that happen? Where would it happen? Maybe for your situation, maybe coming back to your place where you all spend the night, maybe coming back to your household's not the best idea. It really just depends on your situation. Maybe meeting somewhere else makes more sense, meeting up somewhere else. And then just think about how long it's going to take if you had to walk that, and what things do you have to do before you can start walking. Talk to work, talk to your boss. If you're the boss, think about it. What needs to be done before everybody can leave? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's turning off the lights and locking the door. Maybe it's a lot of other things. Maybe you're safer staying at work and hunkering down and sheltering in place at work and just staying there for a couple of days instead of trying to start walking right away. This is the Seattle Hazard Explorer. The link for this is on your handout. They changed the layout, so I wanted to go through it because I think it's a little confusing. When you go to the link, you will see these 6 pictures. I want to encourage you to go to the top left, the one that just says earthquakes, and it will give you 4 different scenes under that tab. So the first one is, these are the fault lines. If that's of interest to you, you can see where all the fault lines are. Nothing you can do about it, but they're there. And then if you hit the next map, you will see some information about where they think building damage is going to happen. Where is the shaking going to be the worst, and where are the buildings really going to be hurt? What are the buildings that aren't going to do well? And as you can see, it's really downtown. It is the darker the color, the more damage there's going to be. It's Pioneer Square and the International District. There's a little bit there, Magnolia, Queen Anne, and then some of these dots are unreinforced masonry buildings, which do not do well in earthquakes. So hitting on the next map, this is a picture of, the red is where landslides have happened. The green is where landslides could happen. And then this pinkish purple are areas that are prone to liquefaction, that whole shaking ground turns into quicksand kind of thing. So there's some big chunks of Seattle that are susceptible to liquefaction. And again, I don't show this to scare you, but if there's a tool out there that will give you some idea of what to expect, I think it's important you know about it. This is a public tool. It's not hidden. It's just, I don't think many people know about it. I look at this when I'm thinking about my husband and my kiddo trying to walk north to Northeast Seattle. So that's landslides and liquefaction. And then the next map is the tsunami. The tsunami that could hit Seattle if the Seattle Fault slipped. The Seattle Fault is the one that runs right under Seattle. It's not the one out on the West Coast. That's the Cascadia Fault. This one is the Seattle Fault, and it runs right under the city of Seattle. So if the earthquake came from that fault line, these are the areas that could have kind of significant tsunami repercussions. It's not 20 feet of water, but greater than 6 feet of water is pretty significant for some of these areas. So again, just letting you know that there are tools out there so that you know what you're facing when you're trying to get your family back together. And maybe heading back to where your home base is, maybe that's not the best idea. Besides thinking about where to get your household back together and maybe what needs to happen at work, if you have kids in school, talk to your school about something called a reunification plan. This is the process that all schools go through. The school day is over with unexpectedly, whether that's because there's a fire in the school, a gas leak in the school, an earthquake, whatever the situation is, their school day is completely interrupted, and the kids are going to go home when their parents or their guardians are there to pick them up, especially the younger kids. Parents don't get to run into a school, grab their second grader, and run back out to go get their fourth grader. That's not an option. School cranks down, school locks down, and parents or guardians and the appropriate child are paired up and they leave the school one by one. So it's a very slow process. Reunification is slow and methodical and very accurate. I just want folks to know that nobody gets to run into a school and grab a kid. The schools are really careful about making sure they send every child home with the right adult and they know where you're going. Because let's say mom comes and gets the kids, and then dad shows up 6 hours later and says, "Where's my child?" And the school has to have an answer. They have to say, "Oh, yeah, your wife picked up this kiddo at 1:20 in the afternoon and they were headed home." That's the reunification plan. Just a little demo of it. Here, the kids are all clustered together, the adults all clustered together. The adults need to bring an ID to prove you are who you say you are. A child and an adult are paired up and they leave the school grounds. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the school reunification plan. The other thing to consider is your pets. Are they at home? If so, do you have a neighbor that can go check on them? And that's just built into your plan. Hey, Mrs. Jones, if you're home and there's an earthquake and you don't think I'm home, come over and check on Fido or whatever. So building your pets into your plan so you're not worried about them and they're as well taken care of as you can make them. And then do you have anybody in your household with access or functional needs that they're going to need a little extra support or a little extra consideration about what's the best path forward there for them, or elderly parents, same kind of thing. Just think about everybody in your household and what might be the best course of action for them. And that's your plan. This is the get home bag. This is topic number 2. I talk about different bags. I talk about your stay box. This is the stuff you have in your household to help you shelter in place. This is the stuff you're going to need for earthquakes or severe weather. And I call it the stay box to get through the idea that you are not going anywhere. You are sheltering in place. If you're not immediately in your household, you are probably really close by. You may be outside, but you're going to be really close to your home turf. The next kind of bag, I guess, is a get home bag, and that's what we're going to talk about. And that's just to help you walk home from wherever you are or walk to wherever your meeting spot is for your household. And then the third one is a go bag, which I don't talk about in this class, but it's a few things that I thought putting together ahead of time would be really smart. If I had time, and only if I had time, to grab it as I'm running out the door because my house is on fire. And that is a very big if. I am not going to injure myself or anyone in my family. If I can't grab it safely, I'm not going to grab it. I'm just going to leave. The other reason I thought this go bag might be helpful is if myself or someone in my family is jumping in the back of an ambulance Are there things I can think of that I can have ready to go in a bag so that I can grab that and my stay at the hospital or in the emergency room or whatever is less crappy? Um, so this is the get home bag stuff. I'm not going to go over this for very long because you have a list: water, food, and medications. In my household, when a new bottle of pills arrives, and we get our stuff mail order, but going to the pharmacy, same kind of thing. When a new bottle of pills arrives in my household, the bottle goes in my go bag, but some of those medications go into the get home bag in my car so that I'm not without necessary medications. So make sure you have a few medications in that get home bag, especially if you cannot go for very long without them. So don't forget about medications. Frankly, medications and water are key. Food is just a nice to have. Here's stuff that if you created your own get home bag, you would know exactly what to put in there. I'm not going to go through this. It's on your to-do list. The small bills are just in case you can buy something on your way home. You don't want to hand somebody a $20 bill for a bottle of water because they might not have change. You want pictures of your household members just to help you identify them. Pictures of your household members with your pets in the same picture. Nice to have a picture of your dog, better to have a picture of you with your dog. It establishes ownership and the fact that you guys belong together. So think about pictures like that. Paper maps are really good in case the maps on your phone are not working. Emergency phone numbers, always important. And we talked about that a class or two ago. Write down those emergency phone numbers, including your out-of-town contact, because you might not be able to remember those phone numbers. Your phone might not work, and maybe you can use someone else's. And then paper or pen in your get home bag just to leave notes at work. I started walking home at 3:30 on a Thursday, and this is the route I think I'm taking. No reason not to leave notes for that. Or if you stop by one of those hubs and they say, yeah, you're not going to be able to get across the ship canal this way, you're going to have to go a different way. And if they give you directions, it's a good idea to write it down so you don't have to remember anything. So that's all the stuff in your get home bag. Super. We have talked about these before. These are navigation apps that hopefully you have downloaded onto your phone, and you have to download the maps underneath them so that if the internet is down, cell phone signals aren't working, these navigation apps still work because those maps are stored on your phone. I'm an iPhone user. I just got a reminder from Apple Maps. I was thrilled at this. I think I read it happens every 6 months. They're now reminding you to download those maps behind your phone. I mean, it literally said, download this map. It didn't say behind your phone, but download this map so that our navigation app, Apple Maps, works offline. I was just thrilled. Anything that can remind me to do something, I'm a big fan of. So if you haven't done it already, make sure that you have gone into these special apps and downloaded the maps, and guidance is on your to-do list for this week. I just said that. If you are lucky enough to have a car and unlucky enough to not be able to drive after an earthquake, which is probably very much the case, you can take this battery out of your car, bring it into your home or bring it somewhere, and power things directly off this car battery. You can pull enough power off your car battery to power your cell phone 20 to 30 times and still have enough juice in this battery to start your car when you put it back in. The gadget that helps you do this is this thing, and it's on your to-do list, the Amazon link to this device. These alligator clips go right on the battery. This ends in a cigarette lighter. You'll need some kind of adapter for your cigarette lighter. Figure out what this needs to look like for you based on how you charge your cell phone. But this device, I think it's like $14, something like that. It's not super expensive, but I think it's very, very valuable. The benefit of taking your battery out of your car and using it to charge your cell phone is that if you left it in your car every time you turn that key, even if you're not starting your engine, you're still energizing a lot of things in your car. So you're wasting electricity. Bring it inside, keep it covered, use it as a source of power. When the roads get fixed enough to drive, throw it back into your car, and you should have enough power left in there to start your car. I'm not a big fan of buying stuff, but I think this one could be really useful. We have one of these in each of our cars. So if we ever need it, heaven forbid we're stuck in a snowstorm or something like that, I am never going to run out of battery for my phone. Final class is next week. It's preparing with neighbors and those all important emergency communication hubs. Wednesday, February 21st at 7 p.m. I'm going to keep talking, but if this is not of interest to you, you're welcome to get off the phone call. I thought this was interesting. I am privileged enough to be a homeowner. And when I first started learning about earthquakes, I thought, well, shoot, if the city is a big mess and sewer lines are going to take years to fix and water lines are going to take years to fix, I don't want to hang out in Seattle. I want to walk away from my mortgage and I want to go live somewhere else that has flushing toilets. So I did a little research on this option of what does it look like to walk away from your mortgage? Does it follow you? So this is what I found out for Washington State. This is only Washington State. First of all, FEMA does not make you whole, not even close. FEMA helps with housing, but basically it's housing for 18 months to put you up somewhere else. It's the famous FEMA trailers or hotel rooms or whatever. Up to 18 months, they will house you so that you can work on your primary home and get that habitable. They're not moving you permanently, they're just putting you up for a bit. So that's what they do for housing. They do offer you small business administration, low cost loans. You have to have a pretty significant loss, $200,000 or more, which honestly in a home in Seattle would not be that big of a deal. They will loan you money. They don't give you money. This isn't a grant. This is a loan. You will pay it back. There we go. Low interest disaster loans through the Small Business Administration. And then they have another program called IHP, Individuals and Households. They will help you pick up expenses that are not covered by insurance or other programs. They're putting you up in a hotel and you need pajamas. That's personal property. They're going to help you. They will give you money to buy pajamas. They will give you money to go back and forth to your home to work on it or back and forth to work. They will help with medical, dental, and funeral expenses if you need help with that because you didn't have insurance. Maximum is set annually. I don't know what that is, but not everyone will qualify for the maximum. And this isn't making you whole. This is giving you enough to get by for maybe 18 months. I'm not really sure how long this goes, probably until you've maxed it out. If you decide to walk away, this is what the foreclosure world looks like. There's such a thing as a recourse versus a non-recourse state. A recourse state, the borrower is personally liable for the debt. So in a recourse state, you do not get to walk away. That mortgage will follow you wherever you go. In a non-recourse state, the lender can only foreclose on the property. So the bank or whoever has your mortgage, if you walk away, they own that property. They can foreclose on it and they can keep whatever they can get for it. Washington, so those are like the two extremes. Washington is a non-recourse state, sort of. They don't let you walk away necessarily. So here's an example. Let's say you owe $300,000 on your mortgage still. You stop paying your mortgage because you said, this is crazy. I'm walking away. I don't want to live here unless the sewers work. So they foreclose on your house. The bank sells your house for $100,000. They're going to keep that $100,000, obviously. In a pure non-recourse state, the bank would just absorb that $200,000 difference. But remember, Washington is a non-recourse state, sort of. There's something called a non-judicial foreclosure, which just means a judge is not involved. The issue stops there. We have a judicial foreclosure option in Washington State. So the non-judicial foreclosure means that nobody else gets involved, nobody else comes after you, the bank absorbs that $200,000 difference. But that is not what Washington state is. We do have a judicial foreclosure, so the judge gets involved. The judge can allow the bank to put a lien on all real and personal property, garnish your wages, etc., for the $200,000 difference. So walking away from your home and just letting it go back to the bank is an option. I wouldn't count on the fact that it's an option that isn't going to follow you into your next life. So if you have refinanced your house, consult a lawyer because I'm not a lawyer. That's all I have for tonight.